Well, hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Here we are on a Tuesday night, the 9th of April, 2019, and with all the attention that the East gets with regards to snowstorms, we know that this winter, particularly from February into March, the snowstorms in the West have been the big deal, and it continues now. Here we are almost a third of the way through the month of April, and we're going to see a big storm in the Plain States and reaching up into the upper Midwest. I think this could certainly be a record setter. Oddly enough, one of the cities that last year set a record for their snowiest single snowstorm in April was Minneapolis. I believe they got almost 1.5 feet out of a storm in the early part of April. Well, you know, this one, well, I don't know about the 1.5 feet, but certainly going to be a big snow producer for them, maybe on the order of 6+, and depending on how this whole thing all tracks out, will determine whether they finish on the higher end or they wind up with something lower. But the bottom line is there will be a large chunk of the plains that are going to see 1.5 feet or more of snow out of this. This is going to be a very, very wrapped up system, very deep, rapid intensification, all the things that the East Coast snow fans were looking for all winter long and haven't seen. Well, they're going to see it out in the West. So let's get to it, because there's a lot to cover here with respect to how this is all going to play. And I'm going to we'll start with the warnings, because I can tell you that I don't know if this is the last time, but I think it might be the last time we see something this extensive as far as watches and warnings are concerned from the Weather Service. So you can tell on this map it's pretty loaded. We've got a large area from northeastern Colorado and a small portion of northwest Kansas, northeastward through much of Nebraska except the southeast, much of South Dakota except the northwest, and into a portion of southwestern Minnesota under blizzard warnings. They're going to see wind gusts of 50 miles an hour or more out of this in some places. Denver probably takes the takes the cake today with regards to some of the observations that I saw from earlier, with temperatures in the mid to upper 70s, and they have a blizzard warning up for later tomorrow night into Thursday morning. That's just the way it happens this time of year, where you could certainly be well up into the 60s and 70s, and then it just comes all crashing down. So we've got this large area of blizzard warnings. Winter storm watches extend from there, by the way, up into the upper lakes, northern Wisconsin, the upper peninsula of Michigan, and much of the rest of Minnesota. We also have winter storm warnings up for a small portion of northwestern South Dakota and into southeastern Montana, eastern Wyoming, extending down into Colorado. By the way, Denver Weather Service office for Denver itself forecasting about 3 to 6 inches for the city, and higher amounts, and we'll look at some of the snow amounts that are being forecasted in just a second. We also have a smattering of winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings up through western Montana, the rest of Wyoming, parts of Utah, into Idaho, a large area of the Southwest from Southern California eastward into West Texas under some kind of high wind warning or wind advisory from this. You're going to have a wrapped up storm with a really, really tight pressure gradient in play here. And meanwhile, out in the east, we still have winter weather advisories up for a number of counties up in Maine, in the northern half of Maine, not in the northernmost part. So Caribou, I don't think, is not sitting in a winter weather advisory at the moment. And by the way, one of my regulars on my Facebook page pointed out that it's as of yesterday, they got 160 inches for the season so far. This their third snowiest winter on record. And who knows? There might be time to put down 1 or 2 more snowfalls. I don't know what whether that'll happen or not, but you just kind of have to go with persistence until it finally just will wind up getting too warm thanks to climatology. But much of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic states and the Southeast on the quiet side starting tomorrow. There's some renegade activity still going on the radars, which we'll touch on in a second. Now, let's I want to just give you a view here. Scott Briller had asked me this morning to show the present snow cover, which is down to a relatively small amount. You have to remember this time of year, if you do put down heavy snow, you're going to melt it almost as fast as you put it down, if only because of the sun angle. And the daytime temperatures are going to reflexively want to go above freezing anyway. So much of whatever falls in the next couple of days is going to be subject to the sun angle issues, the borderline temperatures in some places, compression, and all the rest of it. But it's very possible that you could see some of these places that put down 1.5 feet plus of snow, and it'll be gone within a matter of several days or a bit more than that. So at the moment, we're down to less than 10% coverage. And remember, we had a ton of snow in the northern plains into mid-March. That's all gone except for some areas up in northern Minnesota, northeastern Wisconsin, and in the upper peninsula of Michigan still has some snow cover, and parts of upstate New York, and believe it or not, all of the state of Maine. This is a pretty good site from the Weather Service, by the way. If you Google interactive snow cover map, and you can play with it because you can go to all sorts of, you can go as tight as you want, wide as you want, and it's got a library that goes back a number of years. So you can always, if you want to compare it to another year, the scale is over to the side. You can see it here. There in the Rockies, of course, you've got some 1.5 feet, 2 feet plus. Also in the Sierra Nevadas in California, and on northward up into the Cascades, which is where you would expect to see some of the big snow. Also, still a fair amount of snow cover in southeastern Canada. Starting to whittle it away in areas north of Lake Superior and north of the Dakotas. We're seeing that gradually disappear. This map, by the way, doesn't take the snow cover all the way up. It's mostly it's pretty much focused on the east, on the United States, and just to the north in Canada. And now let's look at what's being forecast. I have to defer to the Weather Service here, if only because of the fact that I don't know the local climate effects, mountains, valleys, and everything else, plains, etc., etc. So they know it better than I do. Here's the outlook. Now, I have it focused over Utah and over Colorado. You can see there's a 5-inch number sitting there over Denver, but just to the west in the mountains, you've got a foot plus showing up everywhere, I should say, in the higher elevations, because Denver is a mile up. And also notice, I'm not sure what point that is. There's a 27 print up there in northeastern Utah, going up into Wyoming. Some big amounts in the mountain ranges, of course, some 2-foot amounts. And then let's shift over into Nebraska and South Dakota. Pair 18, some 20 print numbers and a 22. I don't know what locale that is. It doesn't put all the cities on here, but that 22 kind of stands out pretty well. And then you head up into Minnesota, for example. Minneapolis, the Weather Service there going for 7, but just north and west of Minneapolis, you're going for 1.5 feet or more of snow. This is a very, very large area of heavy snow to see this time of year. But you know, you got a 970 something low that's going to come out of this, and extending that eastward. I've got, this is snowfall, by the way, through Friday evening, and the 1 foot plus snows extend up just about to Lake Superior. And in Wisconsin, you're seeing some big amounts. It's kind of tricky with what's going to happen over the western lakes, because there's snow that's going to run out ahead of it. The snow that falls up that you see back through Minnesota is on the northwest side of the surface low, So it's a little tricky with regards to how much snow you're going to wind up getting ahead of it in the warm advection that is coming northeastward. That sometimes can give you a good solid thump, and then other times it can be very disappointing. So that's something that I think forecasters are going to have to resolve. Scattered 1 to 2 inch amounts back up to parts of northern Michigan. And with what's going on in Maine with snowfall, this is coming from precip that's going on now and into tonight on the order of about 4, 5, and 6 inches in the area where we have winter weather advisories. Even some snows down at the coast near Augusta and on eastward from there on the order of a coating to an inch or two. So those light amounts are going to disappear before too long. So, all right, so let's come back to the surface map tonight. There's this really bizarre setup that we had in a sense with this low that is analyzed sitting up near the Canadian border. You had the warm front yesterday move through in the morning. It stalled out over southeastern Massachusetts. It backed all the way westward last night and went into western New Jersey. And now, of course, the whole thing is swinging eastward as we're getting this weather system to finally get out of the way. We actually had some thunderstorms, and oddly enough, some of those cells even survived the marine layer. So all of this mess in the east, you have this higher pressures in Canada sitting in Hudson Bay, just kind of enveloped completely around, and it built down the coastline. This is typical spring, but it's also reflecting the blocking nature of the pattern that we have right now that allows these highs to build back southwestward. You get this shallow but cold marine air that just comes in, and it's very, very difficult to dislodge. I don't know if you can see the temperatures on this wider view, but I have an actual, we'll go to the actual temperature map, but this was from 5 o'clock this afternoon, where we had readings in the low to mid 70s in the eastern half of Pennsylvania, and we had upper 70s and low 80s before the front passed through parts of Maryland, and then sweeping to the south and east from there. It did warm up quite a bit throughout much of the southeast, in through the 70s, middle and upper 70s, but temperatures were actually kept down a bit because there was some shower and thunderstorm activity with the southern system that is moving on through. So widening it out, we'll go to the west. You're starting to see the seeds. One of the things about these western storms, we're in the formative stages. You oftentimes can see 4 or 5 lows being analyzed and impact of mountains and valleys, and you're seeing it here, this large sort of amorphous area of low pressure that runs up from Montana all the way down into southern Nevada. String goes eastward. Other lows analyzed in parts of Colorado. Of course, you've got all this very warm air that has moved northward from there. Temperatures in the 70s and 80s in Colorado and New Mexico. And there's even a 90-degree reading down in southern part. I don't know what city that is in New Mexico. You've got 90s showing up in Arizona. I'm betting that 95 is probably Phoenix. The 93 might be Tucson. Or actually maybe the 86 is Tucson. And you've got these 90s showing up in Southern California. Oh, so typical in April. We're going to start to see these wide ranges. And then up to the north with the high, you've got temperatures in the 20s and to around 30. So that's pretty cold air that's building southward and southwestward into the Dakotas and eventually going to push its way down into Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. Just remember, folks, we're talking about temperatures that are going from near 80 in Denver to down below freezing. Now, let's come back to, but we'll come back home again and just want to show you these are temperatures, 7 o'clock temperatures. The weather front is pushing this line of dying showers and storms over Long Island. I did get some reports that actually, at least out my way, where the marine layer kills everything this time of year, a couple of cells actually survived enough to produce some lightning and thunder. So hooray, hooray, somebody on Long Island, if a thunderstorm fan got to maybe see some lightning and hear some thunder out of this. The cells were stronger when they moved across eastern Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and in the Hudson Valley, particularly up in the Catskills. Some hail. Chuck Cardillo on the board messaged me earlier that he saw some hail earlier today. But look how the marine layer just stands out. Look at these temperatures here. It never got out of the mid-40s today over Long Island. Even the best guidance had temperatures getting into the low and mid-50s yesterday. Not even close. Upper middle 40s throughout much of northeastern New Jersey. It did actually warm up into the 50s in the western counties and then jump on the Pennsylvania side where the winds were more westerly and now have gone northwest because the front has passed. Upper 60s to around 70. That's where all the warm air wound up going, up to the west. And you saw on the surface map where the frontal boundary was. Makes total sense here. The marine layer just was too much. In fact, if we go up a bit further to the north, a lot of folks, the folks in Connecticut would probably describe today as just incredibly raw. Look at these temperatures up into Massachusetts. Boston, I believe, sitting there at, it's hard for me to see, that's 39. I mean, it's in the mid-30s, mid to upper 30s in northeastern Massachusetts. You're in the low 30s throughout much of New Hampshire and Vermont. And in Maine, you've got temperatures in the 20s where it's snowing. This is the latest radar, by the way, showing the snows covering a good chunk of the state of Maine during the evening hours. So they adding to those snow amounts that they got. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about severe weather threats going forward, because there are going to be some, and I'm going to bring up. This is at the moment. We still, that marginal risk area that was sitting over eastern Pennsylvania, northwest New Jersey, and the Hudson Valley, up to the middle Hudson Valley. So that's pretty much done now. We still have a marginal risk of severe weather left in the southeast, in the Carolinas, down through a good chunk of the state of Georgia, and into Florida as well. That marginal risk extends all the way down, except for the Panhandle and the areas, say, from Tampa, St. Pete, north and northwestward. They're outside of that marginal risk. Getting some hefty downpours and thunderstorms in southernmost Florida at the moment. Marginal risk now setting up in parts of Utah and into Wyoming. And, of course, this is all due to the big storm that is going to be developing out in the west. Okay, the WPC, I'm going to guess, is either WPC or the satellite. Okay, we'll go to the U.S. satellite. And the systems in the east, this sort of complex nature here with this northern feature that's moving through the cold front that is now moving offshore the northeast. And then you have the southern part of the trough with a short wave moving through the Gulf states, the eastern Gulf states, and pulling up all this tropical moisture out of the Caribbean into southern Florida. And that's causing some of the rain that we're seeing on the radar. And in the meantime, out in the west, you start to see all this energy that is piling on into the western part of the U.S. I do have the GOES 17. We can take a look at what that looks like. Just give me 1 second here. All right, let me just load it up. Nope, wrong one. And naturally, of course, now that I know, hold on, the other way. Oh boy, sorry folks. The computer is not behaving, and I'm hitting the wrong keys, which is not really helping matters. Oh, good. Yeah, I got it. All right, so let's look. We could look at the GOES West, and that at least will give you an idea of what's going on in the West, a better shot of it anyway. So let's get rid of this. And if you look up in the northwest, you can see the clouds and energy that's, this sort of long jet that's running across the Pacific. On the upper left, you begin to see the cyclone that is out in the central Pacific there, and there's this sort of long jet that is funneling moisture into the west, and energy that is going and dropping down from the northern Rockies, dropping southeastward from there. So that's all that's all in play at the moment. And on the radars, the radar showing, first off, here in the east, you've got this area of showers moving through. Much of the thunderstorm activity is done. There are still some heavier downpours embedded here, but it is on its way out. Here's the action in the southeast. You've got some strong cells showing up throughout much of central Georgia, both on the east side and on the west side, and even into southeast Georgia. It looks like some pretty good cells well north and west of Savannah, moving eastward, and then getting into probably parts of southeastern South Carolina. And then you look down toward Florida. Now you got all that Caribbean moisture coming up over the Keys with some heavy rains, and that seems to be moving in south of Tampa, St. Pete, well south of Tampa, St. Pete, getting into the rains there that are moving from southwest to northeast. And then in the west, you're starting to see precip here running into northern Utah, across it through Montana. If you watch the motion on the radars, you can actually pick out the upper low that is dropping down from the northwest and heading into eventually down into the Central Plains. Here's what it looks like on the upper air charts on the GFS. And this is for this evening. There's a deep trough from Idaho down into Southern California. That trough is just going to dig and deepen, and it strengthens. Look at how the upper low just cuts off and gets really wrapped up here as it makes the turn and heads northeastward into Iowa and eventually into Minnesota. This is the upper feature. All of this happening, by the way, if you'll notice here in the east, you've got this shortwave trough and upper low in eastern Canada. That pulls out. So the result is you get this ridge that pops up beginning later Wednesday and through Thursday. You've got this strong ridge that builds up along the east coast. Strong ridge, deep trough. They go hand in hand. Now, there's another short wave. If you notice down in the southwest, we're looking at Friday. There's another short wave there in the southwest off of the coast of Baja California. That's going to swing eastward. That is the weather system for later in the weekend and early next week. So with this first low wrapped up and going so far to the west, I don't know how much is going to be left when the front gets to the east coast. You'll notice that the ridge flattens out, but you don't really have a good solid shortwave moving through. The energy lifts northeastward up towards James Bay. So I think we're going to probably see some showers here Friday night into early Saturday morning. I'm not thinking it's going to be a big deal. And then they will move out, and then here comes the next shortwave in the south. Now this one is going to hold together a bit stronger as it makes its turn further to the east, heading toward the Great Lakes. Okay, this was a system that was modeled days and days ago to pass by across the mid-Atlantic states and offshore, and of course this led to numerous snow posts by the usual suspects. Okay, I could go on with more commentary, but you guys understand where I'm going with this. Okay, so that system winds up heading for the Great Lakes, and then gradually some of that energy is going to drop down off the New England coast and out. It's going to respond to the blocky nature of the upper pattern, and then here comes the next one right behind it. So it's basically this sort of bowling alley of weather systems, very strong Pacific energy coming in one after another after another. You're going to wind up in a pattern like this where at least you'll get a couple of nice days, and then the next weather system will approach and move on through. But the intense energy, the well-developed natures of these systems is spending most of that energy out in the western half of the United States and not in the east. Now here's the thing. This is another example of grabbing onto one particular factor in the atmosphere and expecting to get an outcome that you want. Okay, the blocking, and yeah, the NAO is going negative, and yes, the early model runs were showing a very strong upper high. I'm backing it up to Monday, if you look up to where Greenland is, you can see the blocking high in there, just getting stronger, moving toward Greenland. But where the models seem to have erred in this, in that it was for the earlier model runs going back days ago, trying to force that upper high into Labrador and over Hudson Bay. That really doesn't seem to be happening here. You are holding on to a low sitting east of Newfoundland, which just sort of rotates around, but the upper high doesn't really push all the way through, and as a result, you wind up getting ridging here in the eastern part of the United States, and also as a result, playing into that deep storm. And then, as we move into next week, the upper high actually migrates back eastward towards Scandinavia. It just kind of sits there between Greenland and Scandinavia. So, as a result, you're looking at weather systems one after another just kind of marching across. And in fact, you wonder whether this might be, this winds up turning out correct in the long range. It would really drop that trough off the coast of California, and you've got a strong southwest flow and a strong ridge here in the east. Some very warm weather. Now this is toward the end of the month. This is just one run, but I'm just saying that in terms of the overall pattern that you're seeing here, you have to be really careful when you jump on the idea of blocking, because models really have a very difficult time handling it, and more often than not, when they show the blocking initially, you're going to wind up seeing it change. And I also would just point out, and try to remember this when we go into next winter, when you see models doing things in the long range beyond day 7, okay, 99% of the time it's not going to happen, okay. So you want to see the models hinting at things in that range. You don't want to see them if you're looking for a snowstorm. You don't want to see a snowstorm print on day 9 or 10, because it's just not going to happen that way. All right, so let's try and remember that 6-7 months from now, when we start having the conversations regarding the next winter. In the meantime, let's get through the rest of this spring and summer. All right, on the surface map, watching the low developing in Colorado, you can see how the pressure just drops from a 999 pressure initially down to a 977-ish low in Kansas. This is for Thursday morning, and the snows that are on the northwest side. Going back to what I was talking about with regards to areas, say, in Wisconsin and southern Minnesota, this is again where it gets tricky. How much of that cold high builds southwestward? The specific track. Where does the rain snow line set up? Because there will be some northern fringe snow with this, and this lifts up to the northeast. So that forecasting that part of it on the northeast side is very, very tricky. Look how tight the gradient is, though. I mean, we're talking, really, really tight pressure gradient here. Let me just pull up a sounding in this dark blue area, just for laughs. Let's just see what it's got. And you're looking at, by the way, all of this courtesy of Tropical Tidbits, Levi Cowan's great site. You can pull these maps up yourself by going to tropicaltidbits.com. And we're very thankful that he allows us to use it. Here, one particular sounding from that one point I picked in southeastern South Dakota, a 29 temperature. You can see how the upper air temperatures, you go up with height. It stays well below freezing, so clearly all snow. The surface wind sustained, there's a 15-knot barb that is indicated there at somewhere at around 950 millibars. I don't see what the surface, usually there's probably one more bar down at 1,000, unless that's the 1,000. Maybe my eye is not catching it right. So at least at that spot, there seems to be a 15-knot wind there. But you're certainly going to get gusts more than double that and possibly triple that. Just want to pick up another point of reference a little further. So here we've got northerly winds at 20, the low where it is. So this is also, this is more on the South Dakota Nebraska border. Just trying to see if there's any particular spot where the gradient is crazy tight. Here's a 30 knot sustained wind at 27-degree temperature there, and the dot is in western Nebraska, north and west of the surface low. Just get one more. So you got a 25 knot wind, and then just above it there's a 50 knot wind. I picked the spot there in southern Nebraska, but here the temperatures are above freezing, so you've got rain with 30 to 40 mile an hour winds. This is a pretty wrapped up low. And in the meantime, by the way, look at the high up in Hudson, just west of James Bay, oriented northwest southeast. So you've got higher pressures building southeastward into southeastern Canada, into New England, and down the east coast. So that's going to keep things pretty quiet here. There's your surface low that goes so far to the west. Now this will be for Thursday night, Friday. Might be a risk, severe weather risk here across Illinois and Indiana. Something we're going to pay attention to for later Thursday night into Friday, into early Friday morning. That to me seems where the prime area is going to be with regards to a severe weather risk out of this particular storm. And then, of course, as you see the low now back to a 997 low when it's moving through Lake Superior. You've got the cold front that comes through Friday night into early Saturday in the east, and there's some showers with that, but it doesn't look like too big a deal. The next short wave with the southern energy, low pressure coming out of Texas. I think there could be severe weather issues over the weekend in the Gulf states. In fact, the GFS is pretty bullish here for Saturday afternoon in Arkansas and Louisiana. Gets really wrapped up here with the rains on this particular run with a low in northern Mississippi going into Sunday. So there could be some pretty hefty severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center actually does show on their longer range. So here's the severe weather risk starting with, this is for tomorrow. So they've got a slight risk there in parts of Kansas, Nebraska, and into Iowa. The next day on that's the day 2 outlook. So here's the day 3 outlook. So this is for Thursday into Friday morning. Eastern Illinois, western Indiana, larger area of marginal risk, which includes Chicago, just outside of St. Louis, and just to the north and east of Memphis on this one. Now, I'm going to jump to the day 4 through 8 outlook because, as I've said many times, when you see it on the 4 to 8 outlook that there's something there, it's probably a good idea to pay attention. And for starters, at least, they've got this 15% risk. This is for Saturday into Sunday morning. And there's a 15% risk there in parts of East Texas and across the northern half of Louisiana and into Mississippi. My guess is that's going to get expanded. And then moving on to Sunday, Monday, you've got a 15% risk in east central Mississippi, across much of Alabama except the far north and the far south, and into northwestern Georgia. So a pretty good idea to pay attention to it. Then they got predictability too low for days 7 and 8. So it's going to be busy, both from the standpoint of the heavy snows that are being shown by the models, and also from the standpoint of the severe weather that's likely to be produced from this across much of the Midwest, and then eventually into the Gulf states. Very, very wrapped up storm to see this time of year. Just want to get one more thing here. You know what? Let's just look. I just want to bring up the total snow. I'm just out of curiosity to see what the models do with the total snowfall with this, and it kind of matches up pretty well. This covers the next 5 days, so it's going to take us through Sunday. You can see where all the snowfall is. The bulk of what's in Maine, of course, that's all right now. And I'm just backing it up, and there's your snow area. The GFS has got some 24-inch area there in southeastern South Dakota. Not impossible with this, folks. Not at all impossible. The precip, the actual liquid precip that's generated, is fairly substantial there, on the order of 2 to 3 inches. So you know what? If that liquid precip verifies, and most of that would falls as in the form of snow, then you could wind up with some pretty crazy amounts. Just also out of curiosity, I want to see what the NAM did. I also very bullish there with the rainfall on the NAM model. And yeah, now these prints are a little bit absurd, the 33 and the 35, but cut that in half. I think it's perfectly reasonable that you could see, half of that, and I think that matches up pretty well with what the Weather Service is forecasting in that particular area. Really, for the time of year, this is quite the storm. Consider that this would be a big storm at any time during the winter season under, let's call them, quote, normal conditions with regards to the weather pattern. But this was where it wanted to snow much of the time this winter, so it only seems logical that that pattern wants to hang on for a little while longer. Certainly makes total sense to me. So I'm on the board with you guys. J. Von Perry, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. Also, Izzy D, you hit it earlier today in the pre-show chat. Let me just tell everybody, once I schedule the live stream, you can come on early a lot. Sometimes I'm there and able to chat pre-show. I'm doing other things at the same time, so I'm not there every waking minute, but I do sometimes join in the chat on the pre-show. So if you've got a question or a comment, by all means jump on the chat board. You have to have a Gmail address and subscribe to my YouTube channel to do it, and oftentimes the chat board remains open for a little while after the live stream is done. And take a shot, I'm usually watching it, so if I'm not busy doing something else, I will sometimes participate in, let's call it, the after chat. Robert Brown, severe weather along the mid-Atlantic states this weekend. I don't know, Robert. I kind of think that first front for Friday night, by the time it gets here, I just don't think that there's a whole lot for it to work on. There'll be some showers, probably a couple of thunderstorms in the mix, but I don't think I'm not thinking in terms of severe weather for that one. I think there might be a better shot, though, for Sunday. That might be for the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast on Sunday. I'm just looking at the NAM with this first round of precip. It really is, a big snooze. And just running through the GFS, the same idea. I think you probably have a better shot here with the front for Sunday night and Monday, because the energy with that one is going much further to the east. You're taking a surface low that's going to run up. I'll bring the window back up here so you can see it. But you're taking, unlike this one where you're taking a low up basically into the northern plains and into the western lakes, this one is going up in western Kentucky and up the west side of the Appalachians. So there will be a decent frontal boundary there, and some pretty good warm advection and tropical air moving up the eastern seaboard. So I wouldn't be too shocking to me from this. The timing of the front is questionable, but because this is Sunday evening, so there might be. Let's see how warm it gets. The thermodynamics are 2 meter temperature. I mean, it does get temperatures into the 80s into the eastern half of North Carolina and at least into southeastern Virginia, and well up into the 70s to near 80 up your way. Considering that you've already seen that, let's just go on the high end. If you wind up with enough sun, you'll probably see temperatures in the 80s. So I think that you do have a shot for some strong thunderstorms there on Sunday with that second system. Okay, I'll just leave that up there in case there's some other questions. I got a little time tonight, so we can roll through this. Alfred Phillips at 0 right now with a minus 33 wind chill in Wainwright, Alaska. Do you at least have some sun to take the sting out of the air? Turok and Ontor. It was 70 degrees yesterday, and tomorrow is supposed to be 36 with snow later in the day. Yes, as Chuck Cardillo's asking, where are you? I'm guessing you're up somewhere maybe in northeastern Colorado or in the west central plains. Could be. Izzy D, the pic that you have with both of us, I'm assuming you're holding as a souvenir. I do have the pic, Izzy. Thank you. You were at Izzy was at the library presentation with Scott Briller and a number of others back a few weeks ago in Westwood, New Jersey. I don't have any other library appearances scheduled at the moment. Those things kind of run hot and cold, and I was able to do quite a few of them last year. So right now we seem to be in a bit of a cold stretch, but they'll probably pick up at some point. And as soon as I know something, I'll let you know. And if you're in the New Jersey, New York City, Long Island, Hudson Valley area, southwestern Connecticut area, and you'd like me to come out to your local library, let them know I'm available, and they can message me, and we can see if we can set something up. Just trying to run through a couple of the chats here. Seeing some of the posts here. Jason Barry, the rain was so quick I don't think my weather station even recorded anything. Yeah, with that weather front moving through here in the east, there really wasn't a whole lot with it and a whole lot of time for anything to happen. That marine layer was just sitting there waiting to kill those storms off. And I was watching the radars between 2 and 3 o'clock. Those cells were starting to fire up, and it looked like they were gaining some momentum, but the marine layer was just sitting there waiting for them like a spider in a web, and as soon as the cells came inside that area, they just started to weaken fairly quickly. Javon Perry saying, I wish the Northeast would have a big snow event maybe next winter. Yeah, this is how it happens sometimes. You get a bunch of years where it happens over us, and then you get a bunch of years where it happens someplace else. And this was one of those years where it happened someplace else. We certainly spent the whole winter not seeing a single really deep, intense storm, except that coastal low. And that one back, what was it, a week or 10 days ago, whatever that was, that coastal low. That wound up deepening and got to a not reasonably low pressure, nothing crazy, but it did it all offshore anyway. So we couldn't even buy a cheap thrill from that respect for snow lovers at least. Joe Tufano, this should be the last snow of the season in Poland, Maine, just shy of an inch this afternoon, but 4 inches since yesterday. Yeah, the clock is ticking. At some point, it's got to shut off. You would think. Is it my imagination, or are storms getting more intense worldwide? It seems every night the weather makes the headlines. Chuck, you got to remember something. We're in a whole new world in the last, every year it seems to get worse, but we're in a whole new world with regards to coverage. I'm certainly old enough to remember, and Joe Rayo and I have talked about this when we were young, weather never really got any kind of coverage except for really extreme events. And even then, it would be in the aftermath. You didn't have the coverage you have today. So there's this sense that, by a lot of people incorrectly, that none of this has ever happened before. But I would venture to say that if we had social media and it was the technology we have now in terms of the communication technology, the instantaneous nature of it, if we had it back 40 or 50 years ago, then I just don't know. I don't think the perception would be the same. But the bottom line is that you just didn't hear about it unless, and in fact, even when big storms happened in other parts of the country, you'd find a small mention on, page 50 of the Daily News or the New York Post or even the New York Times. Very, very little there. And now, of course, every time there's drizzle, the world is coming to an end as we know it. So I would just say, without looking at actual statistics, there's this sort of ebb and flow when it comes to these storms. And right now, the ebb and flow is favoring more the areas in the west than in the east. It seems like in the last 20 or so years that we've seen more big snowstorms here in the east, even though this year was not one of those years. But in general, over the last 20 years, it does seem like the snowstorms have been producing bigger snow amounts. But it's hard to know what, you go back 40 or 50 years ago, you didn't have the network of observations that you have now. So who's to say that you didn't get those snow amounts back then? You just really didn't know about it. So, it's an interesting question, but I just wanted, you have to put that asterisk on there, if only because of the fact that coverage was very, very different in the world back in the 80s and 70s, and you had to, when you were on TV, you had to actually beg for weather time. I can remember during serious storms, quote unquote serious storm situations, nor'easters and severe weather, where the newscast might have been so heavy that the weather guy was cut down to 30 seconds. And then somebody finally figured out that weather actually is one of the main reasons why people watch television news, and we gradually we got more and more time to the point now where it's just, we dominate newscasts. I always say, be careful what you wish for. We used to beg for time, and judging from how successful weather was and bringing an audience in, well, now we got the time and we have more work to do than far more work that we do now when it comes to a newscast than we ever used to do years ago. All right. Speaking of which, I got to get going. Because I got some new shows to prepare. Johnny Quest, I bet all the snow will make rivers in the Midwest flood again. Well, it might. I mean, I imagine those river levels are still pretty high, even though some of the flooding is abated. There are still some. I still see river flood warnings up there from time to time. So I'm guessing that this snow is going to melt, and you're going to have the same issues all over again. Izzy, last night there was going to be a Joe and Joe show, but Joe had something personal to do and had to leave early. So I will. We're going to do one tonight. So as long as we get it wrapped up before 9:45, I'll probably be able to upload it to YouTube right after that. Otherwise, it'll have to wait until later tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. But if we do the show, I will put it. Up there. Wish we could get a little bit of that blizzard. Says Charles Gale doesn't want to start cutting the grass yet. I don't blame you. One good thing about the cold marine layer on Long Island is that it keeps the snow. It slows the grass. It slows grass growth, and it also prolongs the blooms. The spring blooms of tulips and daffodils. They last a little longer when the weather is cooler. So that's one big plus. If you're a plant lover and a gardener and you like to see the beautiful spring blooms last a while, you like these cool springs. Kerry Clark, the marine layer is very simply if you're along the coast, just what happened today, for example, you get the wind turns to the northeast or east, some sort of easterly component of the wind, and if you've got higher pressures to the north with colder air, the low clouds develop and you get fog and drizzle, and that sweeps inland from the east. This is what happened last night and this morning across southern New England, Long Island, New York City, and into much of northern New Jersey. So suddenly you've got this very cool, moist layer at the bottom of the atmosphere, and to the west, on the other side of that, there's a boundary zone, so there's a frontal boundary. So on the other side of that boundary, you've got southwest or west winds and temperatures up in the 70s. Thunderstorms develop, they move east, they come into that marine layer. The air is relatively stable in a marine layer. As you go up in height, temperatures don't really fall very much. In fact, if there's fog, it's likely that temperatures going up several thousand feet would rise. It gets warmer as you go up in height because aloft warmer air is coming. So as a result, you have a stable atmosphere. On the other side of that, where the winds are southwest, in the warm air, in the warm, humid air, that's where you get your thunderstorm development. You get these storms to move into the area where you go from unstable to stable. Those thunderstorms fall apart. So the marine layer is basically a reference to the cool, relatively shallow air that comes in from off the ocean or from the northeast and sweeps inland and creates an environment where temperatures are pretty much equal to whatever the ocean water temperature is. And they impact thunderstorms as they develop. They move into the marine layer, and the marine layer is a thunderstorm killer. Okay? I hope that answers your question regarding that. That's it. Okay, so let's wrap it up. Joe and Joe Weather Show tonight, hopefully at 9:25. I'm pretty sure we're going to do it tonight. So we'll see you then, and that's on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Just want to give a quick plug to my weather platform on Patreon for those of you who really enjoy lots of weather coverage and extra stuff. You might want to consider jumping on my Patreon platform. We're 250 folks on there right now, by the way. And here's the link to that. And there's also a link on the description of this video. And it's just $2 a month. You can message me anytime, and I respond fairly timely. Live streams just for Patreon members. Although right now, when there's not much weather going on, I've kind of taken a step back on the live stream. So when weather gets active here, you'll get the extra live streams on the Patreon platform. You get a lot of extra posts, maps, and all sorts of things. So consider it if you would. The link is there. Just $2 a month. And you've got my free weather app, which will have some updates coming in the next couple of months. So once those are done, I will let you know. But in the meantime, you can download that for free. And here's the link to my weather app. It works for all mobile devices, iPhone, Android, whatever you have. Just download it for free and enjoy. All right, so hopefully see you on the Joe and Joe Show tonight in about a little over an hour. Have a great evening, and if not then, we'll see you tomorrow.